In this lesson, we will cover one of the more obscure tasks that you'll find in the verbal reasoning, critical reasoning style problems of the GMAT Focus Edition, and that's going to be those asking you to explain something in the paragraph provided. So, to identify these tasks, you'll note some words such as explain, paradox, or justify. And you'll want to recognize the presence of some sort of surprising outcome based on the facts. And the task may include a conclusion or an outcome. It doesn't necessarily have to be subjective here, as in the case with most argument task problems. In this case, we just have some sort of circumstance, either a conclusion or an outcome, that needs to be explained by further information. Strategically, you'll want to note if the conclusion or outcome is in the prompt to help expedite your evaluation, because often they'll actually include whatever the statement is that needs to be justified or explained in the little question stem, and that can help you go a little bit more quickly. You'll want to focus closely on the details of the evidence that's provided, and that's to help you consider common assumptions to possibly proactively and specifically predict what kind of information might be coming from the correct answer choice to help to explain that somewhat surprising outcome that the prompt provided. You'll want to focus, of course, on our common wrong argument answer choices to eliminate incorrect options. There'll be a slight variation on it for this specific task, but they're still going to be the same categorical incorrect options. And you can, of course, eliminate more quickly as soon as one of those choices matches your predicted explanation. Now, you'll recognize our argumentation equation, and this time we've replaced conclusion with conclusion/outcome, because you're still going to have some sort of objective facts. You're going to have some sort of explicit conclusion or outcome that requires explanation, and you have an assumption that is linking the two, and those are going to be the pieces where you're basically finding something that was unstated that actually explains what that conclusion or outcome was. So to explain an outcome, you need to recognize that that described outcome will function as a de facto conclusion in your argumentation equation, and you want to think about the details in conjunction with our common arguments to possibly predict what a reasonable explanation for the circumstance might be. So our common explanation, starting with analogies, we know that analogies assume that the items in the argument are comparable in relevant ways, and a likely explanation should show that even though whatever the items are may initially seem incomparable, the items are analogous in a fashion relevant to explain the outcome that occurred. Our representation common argument is going to assume that that evidentiary sample is representative of the larger whole population in the conclusion, and the likely explanation for some sort of circumstance that is based upon an unlikely representation is going to show that even though the sample seems unrepresentative, or that the terms in the evidence and claim seem mismatched, the sample is in fact representative of the population in the outcome as it's described. So let's take a look at an example. So as always, we'll skip to the end and figure out what we're being asked for, and we note the key term of explain, and we know we're going to be explaining this fan's claim. So we read the paragraph from the beginning. A football fan states, if you ask 100 Thunderbolts United fans to choose between having the Bolts reach the title game and lose to the Galactic Titans, or the Bolts coming in last place and being the only team below the Titans in the standings, nearly each of those fans would choose the last place scenario. So we can see that we've got a representative sample of 100 Thunderbolts United fans, and that might help us to recognize the common argument of a representative sample. So, of course, we'll have to note our explicit conclusion or outcome, and it's kind of both here. It's saying that the fans would choose the last place scenario, so that's an outcome, but the conclusion that the fans are reaching is that it's preferable for the Thunderbolts United to come in last place as opposed to losing the title game if it involves the Galactic Titans in the way described. We'll then broadly predict what the correct answer should do to reasonably explain that outcome based on the facts provided. In this case, it might be something such as find info to explain why Thunderbolts United fans would prefer the last place option in the fans' hypothetical scenario. We introduce our answer choices at this point, of course, and we'll process of eliminate for our common argumentation reasons, starting with vague impacts. And in this case, there really isn't anything in our answer choices that is immediately vague. But there are some things that require additional information, such as in choice A, it states the Galactic Titans and Thunderbolts United play each other at least twice every season. Okay, how often do other teams play each other? Is that a lot? Is that a little? I'd have to make a lot of assumptions. I need additional information to parse this. It does not help to explain the claim at all. We also have choice E, the football fan is a Thunderbolts United season ticket holder. Okay, wonderful. How does that relate to the other 100 fans? Are they season ticket holders? Again, we're going to need more information rather than be able to explain something solely on choice E so we can eliminate it as well. And that's kind of what a task reversal is for an explain a wrong answer choice. It's something that makes the situation seem less reasonable as opposed to explaining it. And we've got a couple of examples of that in choice B, which states the last place team in Thunderbolts United's league faces relegation to a lower division. Well, then there would be no reason to root for Thunderbolts United to come in last ever, even when it includes the situation with the Galactic Titans. Similarly, Thunderbolts United having not actually made the title game in decades makes it seem like we'd want to see them in the title game if we were one of those 100 fans. So choice C also makes the explanation or the outcome seem less explainable. But choice D, Galactic Titans and Thunderbolts United supporters most fervently root against each other. Well, that provides the reasoning that explains why the fans would prefer to be in last place than to see the Galactic Titans win the title game over them. So that's why our correct answer is D. And you've got a decent prediction that would allow you to reach that correct answer choice in a decently expedited fashion. So going back to our common arguments and therefore common explanations, including data and evidence interpretation, which of course assumes that there is no other reasonable interpretation of the data or evidence provided, and a likely explanation should provide additional data or numbers to show that the surprising interpretation of that data or evidence is in fact reasonable. For a causality, we know that the assumption is there are no other possible causes or outcomes for the circumstance, and that circumstance is not merely a coincidence. So, a likely explanation for a scenario involving an unexpected causal outcome should show that surprising causal relationship is actually reasonable for some unstated reason. And of course, our plan or recommendation arguments will assume that you will execute the plan as the conclusion, and that approach will work according to the defined success metric. So the likely explanation here would show that an unconventional recommendation or plan could actually be reasonably expected to work according to whatever the defined success metric is. So let's take a look at another example here. As always, we'll read the question stem first, and we've got which of the following, if true, most helps to explain why accidents increase after food safety training. And here we've got that example where the conclusion, the outcome, is actually included in that little question stem. So that, again, is a way that you can expedite this because we've noted the key term, and we know that the thing we need to explain is why accidents increase after food safety training before we even read the paragraph. But reading from the beginning, food industry safety protocols have expanded greatly in the past 2 decades. These protocols require extensive training to implement, but executives expect the benefits to outweigh the costs long term. However, in the months immediately following such training, the number of workplace accidents tends to increase. And so we see the immediately following, which may indicate a causality relationship, may indicate some sort of plan, and we've got our explicit conclusion outcome directly around that. In the months immediately following this food industry safety training, the number of workplace accidents actually tends to increase. So we'd note that and broadly predict what the correct answer should do, which is to find a reason that the expansion in food safety protocols and training has counterintuitively actually caused accidents to increase. So we need to find some answer choice that explains that causal relationship that seems, at the outset, relatively counterintuitive. So we introduce the answer choices. We process of eliminate for our common wrong reasons, starting with vague impacts, such as choice B. Many food industry protocols have not been vetted by local health authorities. Okay, I mean, food industry protocols, are these even safety protocols? I have no idea. So we can eliminate choice B for being vague. Talking about food processing machinery being more complex than ever before, and choice D, okay, it's more complex. Does that mean it's less safe, more safe? I have no idea. So we can eliminate D for being vague as well. Of course, we can eliminate anything that requires additional information, such as choice C, that introduces the variable of food industry executives who are not required to take the safety training. And you're like, okay, do they actually like cut the meat? I have no idea, and I can't make any assumptions. So I need additional information to parse how C would impact this outcome. And then we've got that same task reversal that makes the situation seem less reasonable instead of explaining it, such as choice E, which says that accident reporting procedure is not a part of most food safety protocols. Well, if that's the case, then we would actually expect that when we get trained up on it, the training should cause the number of workplace accidents to go down. So this goes backward. This is the complete opposite of what we'd be seeking as the correct answer to explain this outcome of the number of workplace accidents going up immediately following these trainings. But if we read choice A, food industry training only occurs at the beginning of seasonal hiring cycles. Well, who's getting trained? It's new people. And those new people will probably take some time to get acclimated to the job, not just those food safety and protocols and training. So choice A reasonably explains the circumstance and is our correct answer. So moving on to our process. Step one, identify the explain task by recognizing the key indicator terms and possibly a situation in the little question stem prompt requiring an explanation. Then step two is to read the full paragraph prompt as written, paying close attention to the type of information provided in the premise and note the explicit outcome or conclusion that needs further explanation. Step three, if you can identify a common argument, go ahead and specifically predict what the correct answer should do to explain that outcome based on the type of argument that you identified. But if there's no common argument that's easily identifiable, you can just use the generic prediction of find info to explain why the outcome, whatever it is, happened. And then step four, of course, is to seek a match to that prediction and eliminate your choices that fail to address the task using our hopefully familiar common wrong argument answer reasons. So let's head on over to the whiteboard and see how you'll execute your scratch work for these types of questions when you encounter them in the verbal reasoning section. As always, we'll start by setting up our scratch work with the answer choice letters for process of elimination. We put a little line over top, and we can see that we are being asked to explain. And we know what we need to explain immediately. So our predicted explanation, before we even read the paragraph, actually can be kind of written out. So find info to explain why farmers remain critical of the tech industry, even with the economic benefits. So, taking a look at our structure here, we'll read the paragraph first. While it is undeniable that high tech job growth has added billions of dollars to global GDP in the past 2 decades, a more agrarian way of life has been lost in this progress. Nonetheless, those rural citizens who once may have been farmers should be thankful for the opportunities afforded by the burgeoning tech industry. So, we want to know why they're still critical, even though we have these undeniable job growths and billions of dollars added to the GDP. And even though you can get the explanation or the prediction without even reading the paragraph, of course, you want to read the paragraph briskly to see what's in there. Now, choice A, modern farming technology advancements have led to a consolidation of both growers and jobs. Ooh, so this actually seems really good as a reason that farmers would be critical of the tech industry. They're going to lose jobs and opportunity directly because of the tech. So once you find a good answer, remember you can go a little bit more briskly. Continued growth in the tech industry has supported job growth in many supporting sectors. That'll be vague. Many rural citizens, well, we're not talking about farmers directly, so that too is vague. Advancements in farming generally lead to a better quality of life across an entire society. Even if we don't accept this as vague, this is a reversal. It makes it seem like the farmers should be happy about the benefits of the tech industry. And then farmers have historically been one of the populations most reticent to adopting innovations throughout American history. This needs additional information because just that something happened in the past doesn't mean that it's going to happen again in the future. So you can see how you can explain a surprising outcome and work with our normal argument structures to address what is a more obscure and somewhat less intuitive question task when you encounter it on the critical reasoning style problems of the verbal reasoning section of the GMAT Focus Edition. So go ahead and practice some of these problems on your own to improve at this higher end difficulty question type for the verbal reasoning section.